Once upon a time, there was a harpy. She lived alone, deep in the woods. The only time she came out was at night to hunt. She preferred not to be seen if it could be helped, for she was the last of her kind. There was a time many centuries ago when the harpy was part of a powerful flock. She was surrounded by her sisters, and they were all fierce warriors. Men would tremble at their might. Until a time came when humans were able to invent weapons strong enough to strike down the harpies. One by one, her sisters fell. Now she was alone and too afraid to come out into the light. One night, the harpy set off for her hunt, only to discover that she could not find any game. She traveled far and wide across the forest in search of food, yet none could be found. The harpy landed herself on a nearby branch, confused and a little concerned. If she could not find anything to eat, she would have to go into the village and take from the humans. Her mouth salivated at the thought of cattle, but she shook it away when she realized she had to determine what had happened to her prey. Perhaps there was a disease which had wiped them out. But no, even a virus would not work so quickly. Besides, she would have felt the impacts. Then maybe her prey ran out of food. Except the forest was lush. There was only one conclusion then. Another predator had moved into her territory. The harpy felt something which she hadn't in a very long time. She felt a twinge of hope. Was the new predator in her forest a harpy? Was she not truly the last? Despite her hunger, the harpy felt a renewed sense of energy and soared into the night. She searched high into the trees. When no harpy made themselves known, she began to call out. Her voice rang across the trees, but still no harpy came. So she dipped down lower, below the top of the trees and back into the forest. Her eyes scanned around as she had for her hunt, but still no other harpy appeared. Then, finally, she saw something. It was a long trail of blood. It stained the ground of the forest. She recognized the smell of deer. Whatever had come into her woods was nearby. The harpy felt herself becoming afraid. If this creature was not like her, and she suspected it wasn't, then what was brave enough to come into her territory? She flew in deeper and deeper, following the trail of blood, until she came across a grotto. Within its shallow pool was a Naga. The creature was in the middle of her meal. Her jaw was unhinged so that she could swallow her prey whole. The harpy hid back behind the trees. She had never seen such a sight. What was she to do? A creature that powerful would not be so easily taken down. The harpy wished that she was not alone, that her sisters were here to help her in this endeavor. The disappointment that she was indeed the last of her kind had been enough to break her heart. Despite herself, the harpy began to weep. In her sorrow, she did not notice the shadow which was approaching her until a voice spoke. It was slow and ancient, as though it had been many centuries since this voice had last been used. "Why are you crying?" The harpy looked up and gazed into the eyes of the Naga. She could see her scaly skin. She could smell the blood and death on the Naga's tongue. The harpy flew up into the trees. "Wait, come back," cried the Naga. "I didn't mean to frighten you. I have never met someone like me." Someone like her? This confused the harpy. She and the Naga could not be more different. She was covered in feathers and flew around the sky. The Naga was scaly and crawled around the ground. The harpy had once been part of a flock, and while she had never met a Naga in person before, she knew from stories that they were solitary creatures. She thought that these words must have been a trick. The Naga could not fly, and therefore was trying to lure the harpy back down to devour her. Still, what a strange thing to say in order to coax prey. But then she thought about it. When had been the last time the harpy had spoken to another monster? All the animals in the forest were just that, animals. They did not have the power of speech the way man and monsters did, which meant it had been many years since the harpy had last spoken herself. She landed on a branch, close enough to talk to the Naga, but far away enough to escape quickly. Her own voice cracked as she asked, "Who are you?" The Naga smiled. "I come from a land far away. I have traveled the world many times in search of food. It has been a long time since I have come to this forest, but now I am back." The Harpy tried to think back to when she had her flock, if she had seen this Naga once before. Nothing came to mind, so it must have been very long ago indeed, back when she still had her sisters to keep her company. "And you are here to feed?" the Harpy asked, to which the Naga nodded. "But this is my home. I have never left. What will I eat?" The Naga smiled again. "I will have eaten my fill soon. I do not need to eat for very long, but I can go decades in between meals. Perhaps we could share?" The Harpy thought about it for a moment. She had nothing to gain from sharing with the Naga. She could insist that this was her home and that the Naga needed to leave. But she thought about what it would be like to speak to someone again, to share stories again. "How long will you need to feed?" she asked. "Give me 1 year," the Naga answered, "and then I will be on my way." A year was not so long to beings as ancient as they were. The Harpy saw no harm in allowing the Naga permission into her forest for that time. Then, if the year ran up and the Naga was still present, then she would insist upon her departure. And so, the compromise was made. By the next night, some of the prey had moved back into the forest, and the two of them set out for a hunt once more. The Harpy soared into the air and caught unsuspecting prey from the sky. The Naga remained low to the ground and would strike her meals from the back. As the two sat down to eat, they would talk to each other. The Harpy would share stories about her sisters, how they ruled the skies together, and the humans used to fear their might. The Naga would talk about all the different lands she had seen. She would describe the many different humans and animals. She would describe the different climates and plants which grew. It sounded like a wondrous yet lonely life. But the Naga said she did not mind, that it was the way of her people to be solitary. "Have you ever met another Naga?" the Harpy asked. "Once," she replied. "I had children many, many years ago. I watched them hatch, and then I left." That sounded dreadfully sad to the Harpy, who had raised many of her own children. "Do you miss them?" The Naga shook her head. "They are out in the world, and that is enough for me." "How do you manage to never be around your own kind?" "I am now." The Naga had a very strange way of viewing the world, at least to the Harpy, but she would admit she did enjoy their talks together. It very quickly became her favorite part of the day. She would rush through the hunt just so they could sit together and converse. The Naga, in turn, also had a world of patience for the Harpy. She would listen and nod as she told her story after story about her kin. What a sad existence, to miss your family. When the winter months came, things were more difficult. The Naga could not move so easily, and often the Harpy had to wrap her wings around her. That was the only time the Naga would allow herself to be held. The Harpy adored pressing their bodies against one another. She even found that she no longer minded the texture of the Naga's scales against her feathers. When spring came, those times stopped, and the Harpy felt sorrow, not just for the lack of intimacy, but also because she realized that their time together was growing short. This caused her great pain, for she had fallen in love with the Naga. Before she knew it, the day had come at last. The Harpy waited until nightfall before joining her Naga. She tried to smile as her friend made her presence known. "It is time," the Naga stated. "After tonight, I will no longer haunt your forest." Is that all you think we are? Is it not true? The Harpy shook her head. She wanted to share her feelings with her Naga, but she knew that they would not be understood. Not because the Naga wouldn't want to understand, she saw the two of them as equals. It was simply her nature. The Harpy would not begrudge her for it. She was in love with her after all. So instead, she asked, "Will you ever return?" "If you will have me. I need to move, to feed. If you will permit me, then I shall return in time." The Harpy smiled. After many years of being alone, she had learned to be patient. She could wait as long as she knew that her Naga would return. Then the two of them set out for their hunt, one last time. They feasted and conversed, one last time. Then they sat in silence, one last time. Sleep betrayed the Harpy as her eyes closed. When she woke up the next morning, her Naga had already left. Then the Harpy flew back to her treetops and prepared for her long wait. She found that despite being alone, knowing her friend was out there made her feel less lonely.